An impeachment vote against the president at the parliament this past Saturday failed to pass, with ruling lawmakers choosing to boycott the motion. With more on the political turmoil here in South Korea with our panel of foreign press members. Hello and welcome to this week's first edition of Press Perspective. It's Monday, December 9th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Ruling and opposition parties remain locked in fierce confrontation over the fate of the president. While both parties agree that he can no longer remain in power, they differ over the manner of his departure from the top office. For more on this, I have Steven Borowiec, a staff writer for Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia. Steven, it's great to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
I also have Andres Sanchez Braun, a correspondent for news agency EFE Spain, live on the line as well. Andres, welcome back.
Hello, Sunhee. Always great to be here. Thanks.
Right. Andres, President Yoon Suk Yeol survived an opposition-led impeachment attempt this past weekend. Do walk us through the events at the parliament Saturday evening.
Well, it was a very long evening at the National Assembly on Saturday. It all started. There was a first a round of voting to try to pass a special probe, an investigation regarding First Lady Kim Gong-hee, and well, the opposition needed the support of the ruling party. They needed at least 8 votes to get that bill passed. And what happened was that only 5 members of the ruling party, of the People's Power Party, voted for the motion. And of course, the bill then didn't pass because it didn't reach the 2/3 majority that it needed. So this was a sort of sneak preview that we got regarding what was going to happen next, right? During that first vote, we already started to see the heated exchanges between opposition lawmakers and PPP lawmakers. And what followed was the voting of the motion to try to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol because of him declaring martial law, apparently with a political motivation last week. Now, what happened this time was that basically all lawmakers of the PPP, except three of them, Mr. An Chol-soo, Ms. Kim Ya-ji, and Mr. Kim Sang-uk, they were the only ones that actually stayed and take part on the vote for this motion. So of course, no quorum was reached in this case because of the boycott of the PPP, and President Yoon wasn't impeached.
Right. Steven, prior to the impeachment vote itself at the parliament, President Yoon Suk Yeol offered a public apology early Saturday. Now, you covered his address for Nikkei Asia. Could you tell us a bit about your coverage?
Well, if we want to go kind of behind the scenes, I ended up having to have a conversation with my editor where I had to clarify that Yoon was specifically not apologizing for the actual imposition or attempt to impose martial law, as one might assume. Really, if you look at the wording of what he said, he apologize for the discomfort and the inconvenience caused to the public as a consequence of that decision. And I had to explain that that's actually quite common in public apologies in Korea, where a public figure who's facing a lot of heat over something, when they break their silence about it publicly, they make specifically that distinction. The wording of their apology indicates that what they are sorry for is the inconvenience and the uneasiness caused by their actions. So in all, President Yoon's apology was, I think, less than 2 minutes or just around 2 minutes. And he didn't really say all that much. He just said that, he felt bad that this had, kind of backfired. And these are his only public comments since he agreed to lift martial law very early on Wednesday morning. So it's a good question as to what he's thinking, what he's doing. There's a lot of debate as to, how much or to what extent Yoon is involved in the day-to-day execution of state affairs, if he is at all. I wrote in a story that I just did today that we're hearing mixed things. Like some people are saying that he's not involved at all, but he accepted the resignation of Interior Minister Lee Sang-min on Sunday. So that demonstrates that he still has at least a kind of minimal role in governance. So this is all dragging on, and so we'll have to wait and see when we hear from him again.
Right, and that taking place, of course, despite the fact that ruling party leader Han Dong-hoon had said that the president would refrain from state affairs. Keeping that in mind, Andres, what has the ruling People Party been saying thus far?
Well, what they said on Sunday after the motion to trying to impeach Yoon failed because of their boycott, what they said was that they want an orderly and early exit for Mr. Yoon. So basically, they're trying to have Mr. Yoon step down as soon as possible. What does this mean, this orderly and early exit for Mr. Yoon? Apparently, the party seems to be doing this to minimize damage. They've said that him stepping down will be less uncertain than having an impeachment, which would automatically mean that there would have to be a snap election called. And of course, polls wouldn't look very good for them. And as you pointed out, Sunhee, Han Dong-hoon, the leader of the party, also said that Mr. Yoon will be not taking care of his duties, including diplomacy, even though we've, as Steve pointed out, we're seeing signs of this not being necessarily true. He approved the Interior Minister Lee Sang-min's resignation, and also the Ministry of National Defense today said that technically, legally, he's still in charge of the armed forces. Now, the PPP has also proposed, apparently what they're trying to propose is an amendment to the Constitution in order to shorten Yoon Suk Yeol's stay in power, which is something that, to be honest, it doesn't look like the main opposition party, the Democratic Party, will buy in this case.
Right, and speaking about the main opposition Democratic Party, Stephen, what has the opposition party been vowing to do following Saturday's failed impeachment attempt?
They're vowing to keep trying on their way out of the, before they'd even left the National Assembly grounds on Saturday. They said that it wasn't over yet and that they would table a similar impeachment motion on Saturday of this coming week, December 14th. And then if that doesn't work, they will keep doing it on a weekly basis on Saturdays after that. There's are some pretty big implications of that, because that ends up taking a lot of effort and a lot of, efforts to persuade the opposite side. I mean, that's clearly not a ideal scenario where every week you're having to gather on a Saturday at the legislature to vote on one of these things. And clearly, if this process drags on, it will be quite disruptive to the normal functioning of a country that has some pretty big economic and security challenges. I guess the hope among the DP Brain Trust is that if they keep up with this, if they're simply persistent, and if they simply are very consistent in their messaging that it's not tenable to have Yoon retain his position, they must be hoping that gradually some number of PPP lawmakers might change their minds and they might decide to vote in favor of Yoon's impeachment, just if for no other reason than to bring an end to this undesirable state of affairs. So they are demonstrating that they are determined. They're not going to accept their first defeat. So all indications that we have now is that even despite the defeat of this measure on Saturday, we still have a long way to go.
Right. And beyond the parliament, Andres, people have been taking to the streets, both in support of and a few against the impeachment of the president. What have you been hearing, Andres, from people here?
Well, when I talk to the people that actually defied the cold temperatures on Saturday evening to go and protest in front of the National Assembly, basically what they said after they saw that the motion didn't pass, they were talking of disappointment. They were angry, although once again, all the protests were extremely peaceful. But yeah, they basically talked about disappointment, especially regarding the ruling party. They actually used some expressions to brand the lawmakers of the ruling party, which I will not share here. But you know, some people, for example, told me how baffling they found the fact that in 2016, the now ruling party, the which back then I believe was Sunhee, the conservatives too, basically supported the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye for charges on corruption, charges that to them they said seem even a little lame compared to declaring martial law for apparent political motivations. Anyhow, everybody I talked to there in front of the National Assembly said, look, we're going to be coming here tomorrow and the day after, and as long as it's necessary for Mr. Yoon either to be impeached or until he steps down. And regarding the people that have been supporting President Yoon Suk Yeol, as you said, Sunhee, a minority, the ones that I've talked to were basically using sort of baseless arguments that we've heard before, calling the opposition, some sort of entity that is spying for North Korea and or China. And they were defending the martial law because they deem it necessary to get rid of these anti-state agents.
Right. Steven, in the meantime, though, some foreign media have also shed light on the energetic atmosphere of the public protest this time around. Could you tell us a bit more about that, Steven?
The atmosphere that I've taken in at these protests so far has been mixed. There's obviously a very strong undercurrent of seriousness in that people feel as though something that's quite precious to them is under attack, in that, you have a government that is attempting to, through force, remove some very hard-fought, long-fought freedoms that South Koreans hold very dearly. At the same time, people, whenever there's any kind of big crowd in Korea, it seems that like the natural energy, the natural inclination is toward a kind of collective celebration. Some element of jubilation and of joy inevitably pops up. So some have remarked on how at these protests there have been light sticks, which I don't know all that much about K-pop, but I think is maybe something that fans customarily bring when they attend performances. And then there's been performances and chants, and I saw at the National Assembly on Tuesday there was a guy who had a quite humorous a costume that was a very humorous take on President Yoon, and he was performing a dance to the delight of a lot of people who are watching. So, I mean, it's nice. It's like I said earlier. I mean, keep in mind that we're dealing with something that is really quite heavy in many ways and quite ominous in many ways. But I think the world, quite rightly, just sort of admires the fact that Koreans are able to have fun with this. That this is not just simply a downtrodden affair with people who are upset. Of course, there are people who are upset, and with good reason. But there's more to it than that. It's these protests contain multitudes. They're a mix of moods. So anybody who's I would encourage anybody who's around the country. I mean, even if regardless of what your political leanings are, just as an experience, they're worth checking out.
Right. Meanwhile, Andres, what have analysts been saying about the fate of President Yoon Suk Yeol going forward?
Well, right now, nobody seems to have a clear answer on what's going to happen. I think uncertainty is the key word here. We're right now in some sort of standoff between the two main political parties in Korea. They both want Mr. Yoon out of power, but they differ on the way to do it. Of course, the Democratic Party wants to be, wants to take the glory of being the party that kicks out Yoon through a motion of impeachment, and to capitalize that on a snap election, of course, while the PPP basically is in some sort of emergency damage control drive right now. They don't want to be the party that, is branded as, the party that had their two last presidents being impeached. They want to be the party that comes out of this as, we are the party that took down our president when he conducted something that we deemed unconstitutional, which is decreeing this martial law. Now, as Steve already pointed out, the problem with this is that as days go by, this whole situation is going to keep tarnishing Korea's image in the international arena. Korea is a country that is facing many economic and security challenges, and also we should think that barely in 1 month, Mr. Donald Trump is going to become the president of the United States, and he has talked about maybe levying tariffs on South Korea, which is something that could affect the economy gravely. He's talked about trying to get more money from Korea in order to pay for the costs of deploying 28,500 soldiers on its territory. And, in regard to that situation, you probably don't want some sort of zombie government dealing with the new president of the United States. Again, it's also about the sort of confidence that you would give to investors. We've seen it today. Once again, the won dipping, and the main benchmark for the Seoul Stock Exchange, the Kospi, dipping down to a 2-year low. So once again, it seems it's going to be some sort of a standoff of who wears down who first. But I think our hopes is that this gets resolved as soon as possible.
Right, hopefully, of course. And Stephen, in the meantime, what are some of the events to keep an eye on this week amid the mounting political turmoil here in the country?
I'm watching the streets myself. I mean, there's a lot of conflicting information as to what's happening behind the scenes. People are saying different things as to whether or not Yoon will be asked to somehow leave office in an alternative fashion to impeachment or something else. But I am, the longer this goes on, I am coming to feel like what will ultimately be decisive here is what in Korea is known as minshim, which is public sentiment, and how perhaps more than some other countries, the political culture in South Korea is one where politicians are beholden to public sentiment, and they have to go out of their way to address what the ways that the public mood changes, and then the things that the public are calling for. I think if the DP is going to successfully impeach Yoon, I feel like something that will have to happen is we will have to see a very large and very sustained protest movement like we saw several years ago leading up to the impeachment of Park Geun-hye. I do think that in order for PPP lawmakers to change their minds and to kind of bite the bullet and agree to impeach Yoon and then have to deal with an election and everything that entails, one thing they will have to feel as though their position is overwhelmingly unpopular, and that if they stick to their position, that they are ultimately compromising their longer term political fortunes. We have poll data now that's showing that something like 70% of the South Korean population is in favor of impeaching Yoon. So if the PPP continue to stick to this message that they can't turn over they cannot relinquish control of the country because the other side are kind of North Korea linked anti-state forces, I think that's a message that resonates with only a relatively small part of the population. It is a sizable part of the population, but it is nothing like a majority, as we see from this demonstrated from poll data that shows that more than 70% of people think that Yoon ought to be impeached for his invocation of martial law. So if that reality becomes starker and is illustrated repeatedly in the streets of the cities around this country, then I think things will really change. So in terms of what's on the calendar, there's hearings every day. There's a number of investigative bodies who are involved in this. There's a lot going on, but what I'm watching is how many people come out to the street and how long they stay there and what they have to say.
Right. For now, it's a very difficult time for Korea then. All right, Steven, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Andres, thank you very much for your insights today.
Thanks.
Right, and we have more on the broader implications of the political turmoil here in our panel session tomorrow. Do join us then.